Top 10 most comfortable Air Jordan retros. Starting off the list at number 10 is the Air Jordan 5. The Air Jordan 5 is one of those models that goes in and out of popularity very, very quickly. Jordan Brand releases a bunch of them and then just stops releasing them, and you don't really know exactly when the next pair of Air Jordan 5s is coming out. And because of that, I don't think as many people have Air Jordan 5s as they have 4s or 3s. And while the underfoot cushioning setup of this shoe is pretty similar to the Air Jordan 4s and the Air Jordan 3s, which makes sense because those shoes released a year or two before this shoe, it's a little bit better on foot, and the upper of this shoe is significantly more comfortable than both of those shoes. Sure, the shoe features a 4-foot air unit like the Air Jordan 4 and the Air Jordan 3, but it's a little bit lower to the ground, so you don't really feel it. However, the upper of this shoe is incredibly well padded, especially around the ankle area. There is so much plush padding goodness going on, it just feels like a pillow on your foot. Which I understand some people might not love, but I do think overall this shoe is a much more comfortable shoe than the 4s or the 3s. Okay, maybe much is an overstatement, but still, it is more comfortable than both of those shoes. Aesthetically, this shoe might not be as good looking as those shoes, and in my opinion, it's not one of my top 5 favorite Jordan models. Maybe it's the number 5 spot, I don't know. But still, a relatively comfortable on-foot experience, albeit not the most comfortable shoe in the world. And ventilation-wise, it's fine. A bit better than the 4s, but not exceptional. Number 9, the Air Jordan 8. The Air Jordan 8 is one of the more polarizing shoes on this list, and while it's a very well-loved and liked Air Jordan retro, I can understand why some people might not like the way the sneaker looks. The marquee feature of this shoe are the straps that wrap across the top of the laces, and in my opinion are somewhat unnecessary and also make the shoe a bit more difficult to get into. In fact, I'd say that this shoe is probably the most difficult to get into pair of Air Jordan sneakers out there, because I mean realistically you really have to undo the straps and then loosen the laces, and this whole process, especially when the shoe is brand new, can be a pain to get into, but once it breaks in, it gets better. I also forgot to mention that another thing that doesn't help getting into this shoe is the internal booty construction, which essentially means that there is basically a padded sock inside the shoe, which yes, feels good on your foot, but man, is it difficult to slide your foot in without pressing down part of it, whether it's the heel part or the tongue. You can just kind of step on the wrong thing and have some issues, but all around, still a pretty comfortable shoe. And to be honest, a lot of that does have to do with the internal booty construction. It's very well padded, it's very soft, it really hugs your foot nicely, especially when you lock down these straps. And when it comes to underfoot comfort, you've actually got 2 air units, one in the forefoot and one in the heel. And while they're not as soft as some of the other shoes that we'll talk about in the list, obviously, because this shoe is nowhere near the top of the list, they are pretty comfortable underfoot. The main downside for me for this shoe, and the reason this shoe was lower on the list than I think it could have been, is the fact that this shoe is so incredibly hot on foot. The hottest shoe on the list, in my opinion by far. Not only is there just a lot going on in the upper and not really any ventilation, you've got this internal booty ankle thing going on which doesn't offer any kind of ventilation, and it's just a warm, hot shoe. And even wearing this shoe for like an hour, you get hot. And especially in the summer, man, it's a warm experience. So maybe not a summer shoe, but you know, other than that, it's pretty comfortable. I mean, really, the air units, fine underfoot. The padding, really nice on this shoe, but the heat is a problem. And while the design of this shoe is polarizing, you can't deny how iconic this sneaker is, especially in this playoff colorway. It's beautiful, the Bugs Bunnies are beautiful. A lot of really great looking pairs of Air Jordan 8s are out there, and there's a lot of good options when it comes to grabbing this shoe. So don't write this shoe off just because you might not love the paneling on the upper of this shoe. Definitely worth trying out. Number 8, the Air Jordan 9. In my opinion, the Air Jordan 9 is a great looking silhouette. It's one of those shoes that you can throw on and it looks crispy. I don't know if crispy is the right way to describe the Air Jordan 9, but that's just what I thought of. That was the first word that came to my head. The upper of this shoe is pretty well padded. Ventilation is fine. You really only get ventilation through the tongue of the sneaker. These ventilation holes on the side of the shoe are basically pinpricks and do nothing. Depending on the version of the Air Jordan 9 that you get in the colorway, the leather is decent. You've got some nubuck, or I guess Durabuck material that's used on the mudguard of the shoe. But the main reason this shoe made the top 10 list is because of the underfoot cushioning setup. You've got a Zoom Air unit in the heel and a Zoom Air unit in the forefoot. And while it's not as soft underfoot as some of the other shoes that we'll talk about later on in the list, it is pretty decent and it's all around a pretty comfortable experience. Like the Air Jordan 8s and some of the other Air Jordans that we'll talk about later on in the list, this shoe features an internal booty construction, which is fine. It's actually easier to put on than some of the other shoes on this list, mainly because the rest of the upper of the shoe is a bit more traditional. But I gotta be honest, the Air Jordan 9 is relatively unexceptional. It's not the best looking shoe on the list, it's definitely not the worst looking shoe on the list, it's not the most comfortable shoe on the list, it's definitely not the least comfortable shoe on the list. It's kind of right there in the middle, just living life, enjoying itself, and it's, you know, if you like the Air Jordan 9, you're probably gonna like this shoe. Still a dope retro, but in terms of Jordan retros, it's just kind of middle of the road. Coming in very fittingly at number 7 is the Air Jordan 7. Even though in a lot of ways the Air Jordan 7 is pretty similar to the Air Jordan 6, it's actually a significantly more comfortable on-foot experience. And the main reason for that is that this shoe features an almost full-length Zoom Air unit. It is called the full-length Air Zoom unit, but it's not as full-length as some other Jordan models. Like the Air Jordan 6, the Air Jordan 7 features some ventilation holes in the upper, which do give this shoe some pretty decent ventilation, better than most of the shoes on the list. And this internal booty construction that kind of hugs your foot is actually really comfortable on foot. I will say though that this shoe is pretty difficult to put on. Not as hard to put on as the Air Jordan 8s, but it's definitely not the easiest experience. At least not the first few times that you put this shoe on when it's new. The more that you wear this shoe, the more broken in it gets, the easier it is to put on, but initially it can be a problem. Material-wise, the shoe is fine. It obviously varies depending on which colorway that you're getting. This is the Cardinal colorway, which you can actually get for under retail currently, and if you want to grab this shoe or any of the other shoes on the list, I made sure to leave affiliate links through the YouTube shopping tab on your screen and also in the top of the description below. But in 2024, an incredibly underrated sneaker that not only looks good, but also feels really good on foot, and if you haven't tried the Air Jordan 7, this is a great colorway to go for. It's just clean. It's just a really, really clean silhouette. I love this shoe. And when you pair this sort of soft booty-like construction in the upper of the shoe with this full-length Zoom unit in the midsole, it's pretty soft on foot. It's a very, very comfortable experience. Number 6, the Air Jordan 2. Bet you guys didn't see that coming. I didn't see it coming. In fact, until I compared this shoe to other shoes, I didn't even believe that this shoe was this comfortable. I really had this shoe like at the bottom of the list with the Air Jordan 1s, but genuinely, this shoe is nice on foot. Tech spec wise, this shoe is nothing special. This shoe released a year after the Air Jordan 1, so it's not that different from the Jordan 1s. However, this shoe does feature a larger air unit in the heel of this shoe. The midsole is a little bit softer underfoot, and the upper of this shoe is crazy padded. I mean, it's like you got pillows on your ankles. It's ridiculous. Plus, ventilation wise, this shoe is a little bit better than the Air Jordan 1s. Not a lot, but a little bit. This is the kind of shoe that I'd recommend to someone who's looking for a good, firm underfoot feel. Yes, it's firmer than some of the shoes we've talked about on the list, but it's actually more comfortable than those shoes, mainly because it's a little bit wider, you've got a bit more room. The air unit is soft, but not too soft, like you can notice it, but you can't notice it that well. If you like court feel and you like a firm ride, but you still want a comfortable experience, this is a good way to go. It's a shoe that honestly doesn't make a lot of sense when it comes to comfort. Like, I don't understand why I think this shoe is so comfortable, but I do, and that's why it's number 6 on the list. I definitely recommend trying out a pair of Air Jordan 2s if you haven't yet. They're a great model. There's a bunch of Air Jordan 2s on the market right now. I love them. I think it's a great shoe. Will everyone agree with the placement of this shoe on the list? Absolutely not, but I really do think that this shoe is deserving of the number 6 spot. But hey, if you already have some pairs of Air Jordan 2s and you're thinking, that shoe sucks on foot, I really don't like the way it feels, well, you can enhance the way that it feels by adding a pair of Apothecary socks. Number 5, the Air Jordan 10. The Air Jordan 10s are one of those Jordan models that really don't get a lot of love. This is a 9. I mean, maybe more than the 14s, but still, it's not one of the most popular Air Jordan models. But I do think it's actually one of the more comfortable Air Jordan models. In fact, the 5th most comfortable Air Jordan model. The shoe usually comes in a leather upper with a full-length Phylon midsole and a full-length air unit. Now, there are other shoes on the list with the full-length air unit. However, this air unit doesn't feel as soft underfoot as some of the shoes that we'll talk about later on in the list, so that's why this shoe is not higher on the list, but it is a pretty comfortable sneaker underfoot. It's a decent on-court performance shoe. Ventilation is reasonable, I guess. And stylistically, it's really clean. And what's interesting is that when you compare the shoe to an Air Jordan 11, you can really see where some of the design cues from the 11 came from on the 10. The ankle area is well padded, the tongue is pretty well padded. It's an all-around solid shoe. Plus, if you forget some of Jordan's accolades, you can look at the outsole of the shoe and you've got all of them right there for you, or most of them. All the ones up to the Air Jordan 10. This is actually a shoe that I like a lot, and I wish I had more pairs of 10s in my collection, but there haven't been a lot of 10 releases in a while. So if you want a pair of these, you might have to go into the archives, hit up GOAT, hit up StockX, grab a pair from a couple of years ago, but I would love to see these shoes come back in full force and we get a bunch of Air Jordan 10 colorways. Now we get to one of the most controversial picks on this list, number 4, the Air Jordan 11. Yes, I understand that a lot of people think that this is not that comfortable of a shoe, but I beg to differ. Not only is the Air Jordan 11 one of the most popular Air Jordan sneakers of all time because it looks amazing, but also because it performs well on court. And a shoe can't perform well on court if it's not comfortable. You can't wear it. The Air Jordan 11 not only features a full-length Phylon midsole, but also a full-length Zoom Air unit. This full-length Air unit, or almost full-length Air unit, it's called a full-length Air unit, but it doesn't actually go the entire length of the shoe. It goes from like here to here. Feels pretty nice underfoot, and there's really not a lot of other Jordan retros that have that. Sure, I've seen people online complain about the patent leather on this shoe and how it constricts their toes, but this shoe wasn't designed to be a lifestyle sneaker. Actually, none of these shoes were. This shoe was designed to be an on-court performance shoe, and this patent leather offers a lot of containment. But hey, that's not what this video is about. This video is purely about comfort, and this shoe is much more comfortable than people give it credit for. That full-length Air Zoom unit feels incredible underfoot. Sure, the patent leather might be a little bit stiffer than some people would like, but when you pair it to some kind of soft mesh like the ballistic nylon used in the upper of this shoe, or even the suede used in that really awful tan colorway, this shoe is pretty comfortable. Not only that, the upper of the shoe is pretty well padded, but not overly padded. It's like a very, very soft padding, so your foot really has a lot of room to play and move in this shoe, which I like a lot. Ventilation-wise, this shoe isn't great, but really what Jordan Retro is, and coming back to the patent leather on this shoe, if you really don't like how your toes kind of come together in the front of the shoe, which I don't have a problem with, but some people do, maybe go up half a size. But if you think that the Jordan 11 is one of the least comfortable Jordan Retros out there, you really gotta try it on compared to some other Jordan Retros. I don't think you understand how comfortable this shoe is until you compare it to some other shoes. So yes, possibly a controversial pick, but I stand by my decision. I think this shoe is very comfortable on foot. Number 3, the Air Jordan 13. Weirdly enough, when I was doing research for this video, the two shoes that consistently came up as the most comfortable pairs of Jordan Retros on Reddit boards and Twitter and places like that were the Air Jordan 3s and the Air Jordan 13s. And I don't know why the 3s were even in the conversation. I mean, if you worn a pair of 3s next to a pair of Air Jordan 13s, they don't feel the same. All that said, the Air Jordan 13 is an incredibly comfortable shoe on foot. The upper of this shoe is very, very well padded. The tongue is super well padded. The ventilation is none, basically. I mean, you really get hot in this shoe, but it's not as bad as another shoe, which we'll talk about later on in the list. But where the shoe shines is the underfoot comfort. The Air Jordan 13 features both a heel air zoom unit and a forefoot air zoom unit, which feels incredible underfoot. Well, incredible compared to the other Jordans on the list. I mean, there's a million other shoes out there nowadays that are much more comfortable, but comparatively, this whole video is comparative. The materials on this shoe are decent. They're nothing exceptional, but they're fine. On this playoff colorway, you've got tumbled leather on the toe and on these panels on the sides of the shoe. You've got suede on the midsole and towards the heel of the sneaker. And while aesthetically the Air Jordan 13 is definitely not one of my favorite Air Jordan models, it is still an iconic sneaker. It's still got a lot of history behind it, and it's one of the most comfortable Jordan Retros out there. Plus, you got that little jewel towards the heel that kind of fogs up over time. That's a cool touch. Number 2, the Air Jordan 14. The top 3 shoes on this list are somewhat interchangeable in my opinion. There are things I like about each one and things that I don't like about each one. But the Air Jordan 14, in my opinion, is one of the most comfortable Jordans of all time. I'm talking modern Jordans, I'm talking retro Jordans. This shoe is an incredibly comfortable on-foot experience. Unfortunately though, a lot of people don't get to experience that because the Air Jordan 14 is one of the least popular Air Jordan Retros. And I guess I can understand why. I mean, visually, it's not the prettiest Air Jordan model. It looks like a racing shoe, and I don't think a lot of Jordan heads are into that. You've got the Ferrari-inspired Jumpman logo on the side of the shoe. You've got a very driving shoe aesthetic. I mean, there's even a Ferrari model of this sneaker or a Ferrari colorway of this shoe, so it's obviously inspired by motorsports, and if you're not into that, you probably are not going to love the way this shoe looks. I personally don't hate it. I think it's fine. I like rocking this shoe, but it's definitely not my favorite Air Jordan Retro visually. However, when it comes to comfort, this shoe is incredibly comfortable on foot, and one of the main reasons for that is because this shoe is deceivingly light. This shoe looks like it could be a heavier Air Jordan model, but it's crazy light in hand. Not only that, this sort of mid-low cut situation that you've got going on also feels great on foot. The ankle area on this shoe is incredibly well padded. It's surprisingly breathable for what it is. I mean, it's still an Air Jordan Retro, so it's not gonna blow your socks off, but it is somewhat breathable. Especially with this little car-inspired air scoop detail on the medial side of the shoe, it actually does let in a decent amount of air. Underfoot, the shoe features a heel air zoom unit and a forefoot air zoom unit, which gives you some nice bounce and some nice cushion when you're walking in the shoe or playing basketball in this shoe. If I was to play basketball in any of these models, I probably would play in the Air Jordan 14, not just because it's the most modern, but also because I just like the way it feels on foot all around. And the materials used on this shoe are pretty decent. You've got a nice tumbled leather in the midfoot, you've got a more standard leather towards the toe. It's a pretty premium feeling shoe, and like I said, it's number 2 on the list because it's really comfortable. You'll understand when I get to the number 1 shoe on the list, but if there was a pair of Jordans from this list that I would throw on every day purely for comfort and not for visuals, this would be the shoe. No, it's not the most comfortable underfoot comparatively, especially not compared to the next shoe, but for me, it's the all-around comfort package that makes this shoe one of the most comfortable shoes on the list, and probably the shoe that I'd rock every day. Coming in at number 1, you probably could have figured it out from a process of elimination, the Air Jordan 12. In my opinion, there is not one shoe on the list that comes close to the underfoot comfort of the Air Jordan 12. This shoe features full-length air zoom, which feels absolutely amazing underfoot. It is by far the softest and bounciest Air Jordan Retro sneaker. It doesn't look like this shoe would be that comfortable on foot. I mean, it looks like a boot. It also kind of feels like a boot on the upper of your shoe in terms of like stiffness, but underfoot comfort, this shoe is unmatched. And out of almost all of the shoes on the list, this is one of the only ones that I didn't pull off my feet and go, ah, Like I pulled it off and I was like, okay, back to normal, I guess, but that was comfortable. I'm not sure exactly why they didn't put a full Zoom Air unit in the Air Jordan 13's midsole and the Air Jordan 14's midsole. I'm sure there's a bunch of reasons why. I'm not sure what those reasons are, but I wish they had. In fact, if you pair this underfoot cushion with another shoe on the list, like the 14s or the 13s, that shoe would by far be number 1 on the list. Unfortunately, the upper on this shoe is very, very stiff and is also not breathable whatsoever. I really struggled with whether I should put this shoe at number 1 on the list or the 13s or the 14s because both of those shoes have a more comfortable upper. However, the midsole on this shoe is just that much better, and so that's why this shoe is in the number 1 spot. However, if you rock this shoe, keep in mind it is gonna get hot. It is kind of stiff. It does feel a little heavy and like a boot on your foot, but man, that cushion is nice. And while I'm not in love with the way that the upper of this shoe feels, the materials used on this upper, this full grain leather, looks really nice. It's pretty high quality, and there is a decent amount of padding around the ankle area. So even though it's hot, it's not an uncomfortable experience. So here it is, the Air Jordan 12, the most comfortable Air Jordan retro sneaker between the 1s and the 14s. At this point in the video, I would love to know your thoughts on this list and whether you agree or whether you disagree. I can hear the comments now. Let me know your list in the comment section down below, and don't just give me the most comfortable, give me the full list. I want to see how you guys rank them to kind of get your thought process on this, because I really did try on all these sneakers and wear them for a while, so I do have some understanding of how these feel on feet. So I'm ready to get into an argument about this, so let's do it in the comment section down below. Guys, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you like this video and you want to see more videos just like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.